Oh, so precious. Yeah. It's beautiful just that we have a nice, cozy place to come together and join heart to heart and talk about what matters most in our hearts and what's on our mind, and expose and express, and not have some kind of a form outcome in mind, just for the healing, just for the healing of God's Son. That's the remembrance of who we are. So, wow, it's been quite some days, 4 movies. I was just praying on a movie for tomorrow. And I was telling Jesus, well, we showed the Marilyn Monroe movies, so that was a root canal. So we better have a comedy because we can't get too serious here about anything. And so, yeah, that's probably going to be our comedy movie tomorrow. But so this is our precious time to be together, and if there's still things that are on your mind, or things that you're ruminating about, or you're thinking like, maybe I could just have a little more clarity, or maybe it's just something that one of the movies just really touched your heart in a big way, and you feel like something really opened, and you want to keep that opening happening and have that remembrance of that particular moment in the movie, and maybe it touched you and you feel to share it with everybody else. That would be a blessing too, because we're all the same one and we're all going through the same awakening. So it's quite precious. Everything we experience, everything we share is for the good of the whole. It's very profound. So I plan to just have this be kind of a very open session for Q&A, and we can get into any topics that you want, or you want to share any miracles, or if you want to develop something that you're kind of feeling that's coming, you're on the cusp of something from the movies, and you were like, pondering. Okay, I see Maria. Do we have a microphone? She's raring to go. She started us off with the prayer for God, and here she is.
Something that happened last night. No, 3 a.m. And I've had this experience of almost dying 4 times. And after each event, I would be like, why? Like, why I didn't die? Why God spared my life? And I never got anything. So it would be like 1 and 2. And I kept maybe thinking about it. And almost always I thought it was fixing something in the world. Maybe I have to save something. And so that's why I was here. And last night, as I was saying during breakfast, like the Mexicans say, me cayó el 20. Like I really got it. And I thought, no, I got this book, your book about purpose. And I'm like, I'm not here to fix anything. I am here to accept the atonement for myself. My purpose is forgiveness. That's it. That's what I have to do. That's why I am here. And maybe that's the reason why I want to have an experience of God, because God is really my Lord and Savior. Like, hey, 4 times? I say that's my hero, right? And I was like, it was so, and then I listened again to both songs, the one that we listened to yesterday. It was such a beautiful moment. And then, of course, I really felt really, really grateful. And my question for you is, because I cannot feel emotions like that. So my question is like, how do you feel gratitude as an experience? I don't know that.
I think in order to feel gratitude as a consistent experience, we it's a state of mind, and we have to give it to keep it in awareness. So we just have to keep giving it. And everyone knows, even like Oprah had her gratitude list and how helpful that was for so many people, that when you put an active effort at being grateful and extending that gratitude, then it gets stronger in your awareness and it gets more consistent in your awareness. The other thing is, a lot of times with the Course or with Jesus, Holy Spirit, a lot of times people are looking for very, very high ideals. But actually I find the way to have more of the stable state of gratitude is to just stay very present and very open-minded in terms of if there's anything you're to say or to do, to talk to somebody, to call somebody, to just share a moment of thanks and gratitude, to send a little I love you to somebody when they come to mind. Those are the things that are most practical. So when you look at this world, when people are contemplating what's it all about, what's my calling, what's my purpose, your demonstration and your attitude is the strongest teacher, and then that's like your calling card. Your happy tune you sing, your smile, the way you carry yourself, is like a calling card, and it helps people feel safe and trusting, and then they sometimes will come up with a question, or they'll even pour out what they're going through, and that's setting up a beautiful holy encounter where the Spirit can just speak through you and bring comfort. And the miracle always blesses the giver and receiver. So the miracle has to be under the direction of Jesus, because in order for it to be effective, Jesus has, you might say, the best view of everything, so he knows what can be spoken, if anything, and what can be received. So I'd say you think of miracle working as more like an art. Like if you were practicing to be an artist and you were practicing your art, practicing your craft over and over, you're doing that with the way that you're being used by Spirit in a very gentle way. You want to be lighthearted. It's always good to be lighthearted about everything. It doesn't even matter what the words are that you use, but the feeling of lightheartedness is so important. And as you're willing to just give that and extend that every day, just by starting up in the morning and just, again, feeling your willingness to be used in any way that's truly helpful and to be shown. Not without a lot, you don't have to have a lot of, I should do this, you don't have to have a lot of lists, you don't have to do, I must do this today, I must do that. It's best to clear the slate and just say, here I am, I'm willing to be used for miracles today, and then just be on the ready. It should inspire you too, if you feel a little nudge or a prompt to reach out to somebody or communicate in some way or to do something for someone. I mean, that movie last night, a lot of times Evelyn was told something that she needed to do for the jump, for the verse jump. And one time it was, say I love you, as this woman, Deirdre, was coming at her or coming near her in kind of a loud, destructive way. It's like, you need to express your love and affection for Deirdre. And she said, what? She was just like, what? Because it was like, that's the last thing that she thought she would hear. And she was quite humorous about, that. But she was also very much, she was very transparent for all of us. So that's the beautiful thing about Evelyn in this movie, was she's so transparent with her feelings, she would, even when she would ask a question and she wouldn't get an answer, if she really wanted an answer, she'd say, no, forget your cows and your cream cheese. And she would just, I want to know now. Explain it to me. Like, I really want to hear it. And that was a beautiful thing too, because earlier in the movie, she was more just wanting to curl up in a ball or just get away. Too busy. No, not now, too busy. And then when she really, really felt it, no, I really do want to know, she did speak it. And that's another thing you can do in your relationships and while with your time on earth, so to speak, is just be very authentic with everyone, because you've been through four of these, we'll say, near death or death kind of experiences. So you're getting more and more like, wow, I really don't have anything to lose here. I've got a lot to offer and nothing to lose, and that's the good state of mind to be in. Yeah, that's how you can really become consistently grateful.
Thank you. That was very useful.
Glad. I'm glad.
I have a question. Actually, I'm feeling to hear more from you about this giving mode. Sometimes I feel that it's so abstract, and it will be helpful to hear more about this giving. Yeah, feels good.
Yeah. It's interesting that is number 7. The characteristic of teacher of God is generosity. But, we'd have some ideas sometime about generosity and what that means. And usually it involves kind of conditions or definitions around materiality, because that's what we experience in this world so much. But yeah, there's this series called The Chosen, and I remember there was one time when Jesus was asking a few of the apostles to collect some wood, and they were like, okay, and they really didn't see the context of why they would be collecting wood, because they were breaking their campsite and they were moving on to another place. So they're kind of like doing it, but they're like, why did he have us do this? And I think the reason underneath it was that it was just this deeply valued experience of generosity. Like he was actually just leaving wood in the place that they'd been for whoever would come next to the campsite. It wasn't even a busy road or anything. It was kind of secluded, but he still was leaving something behind for the next one, with no idea of who the next one would even be. So it's something like I grew up with, was like when you go into a space for a while and you abide there, then when you leave it in as good or better condition than when you found it. And to me, there's something underneath that. There's like a generosity, there's a givingness. Like you don't have to have a specific person in mind. You don't even have to know who's going to be next in the room. It's just that leave it in as good or better condition. And it's kind of like the thing called pay it forward, where you're just doing it for the love of it, and you don't know specifically, it's not you're targeting it for someone, which the ego likes to target its gifts, because its whole thing is giving to get. There's a motive underneath to try to get something from it. That's why it targets its gifts. And then it follows up, did you get it? Did you use it? How are you going to use it? And Jesus is like, no, this actually isn't a gift if you have to follow up with your gift. If it's not freely given then, because there's obviously an investment in the gift, how the gift is used, if the gift is used. Did you like it? If it's a free gift, the joy is in the giving. It's not, you don't need a feedback response. Did you like it? Did you use it? So I think that starts to get at the essence of it, because actually, this world of time and space is all based on the ego, and the ego is a belief in lack. So that's like the if you called this world like a computer with a computer program, the default mode is lack. So that's why it takes so much seemingly even effort at the beginning to turn your mind away from that lack, because you're used to thinking in default mode. It always is in default mode. Okay, what have I got to do? What's needed? What's lacking? And it's almost like the mind has forgotten completely. It's had complete amnesia of heaven, which is just a pure state of light and love and giving. And now it's in a haze, a fog, a mesmerism of lack. And so everything that it's learned is in some way tied into lack. And that's where the survival mode comes in, And then you think, how much of my day should I devote to survival things, and how much to other things, interest, inspirations, and so forth. And that's the big turn. I know for me, even when I came across the Course, I believe it was 1986, and so I was about 28 years old in the Parable of David, and then as I started to pray and meditate and use the Course, I was drawn to it, but I did have that part of my mind. It was like, well, okay, that's all right, and you can give a little time to this, but there's so many other things that need attention. And especially, like at 28 years old, you're supposed to be really establishing yourself in some kind of major way with how you will present yourself to the world and how you will make it through the world. It's like you're supposed to really have your life plan kicking into gear in late 20s. So to me, there was a strong draw to the Course and a strong draw to where it was taking me. And then there was this other thing going on, which even after I would read the Course and start to let my day be used for miracles, it would kind of be in the background. The default program was still running in the background. Like, don't forget about this and this and this. You're going to be in trouble if you go too far with this, because how will you survive? That's basically. And yet I did have an intuitive feeling that Jesus was very practical. He was going to give me the most practical curriculum, so I could continue on and deepen, but also things would not drop until they were meant to drop. They would be dropping out of like an emergency or dropping out in leaving me in shock, but more they would drop away and be like, oh yeah, that's about time that one, I don't need to do that anymore. So it would go that way. And it always helped me just to remember that I had a communication function, because even that, because I'd been so shy and as a child, in high school, in university, I remember even in the later years of undergrad, there'd be some people in the class that would like to try to pick on me, and then others would say, just leave him alone. It was that much shyness and everything. And then I think the direction of the Course is in communicating, and then part of that is exposing and being transparent. And then if you go deep enough with the transparency, then of course your mind starts to shift into loving thoughts. And then that's important too. You're meant to be, transparent and generous with your loving thoughts and not hold back for any reason. But that takes a bit of, of persistence and willingness to do that, because it's kind of like a salmon swimming upstream. You're just not used to being that way. It's not something that is encouraged in the world to be that loving. There's suspicion if you're loving. It's like, what do they want? That's the ego is always extremely suspicious around love. What's in it for them? What do they want? But I find when you get into that, it gets more and more natural. It's like a threshold you cross over, and it gets more natural. You just keep at it, and you keep at it. And then it does start to feel like your natural mode of being. Like you just start to feel naturally generous, naturally giving. and you're not considering what do I get back in return. You're really getting to the practice of all that I give is given to myself. You're really taking that to heart and saying, wow, everything that I give is my gift to myself. I was blessed to have some really good experiential books that were based on the Course, of people just trying to practice the Course and what happened with their experiments and how they went, which was, I found, extremely, extremely helpful. A couple days ago, 2 or 3 days ago, I took a trip to this little town in Utah called Linden, because a friend of mine from Great Britain, Lucy Ricks, had put together a book of parables from my life and from the lives of others. We put it up as a EPUB and a PDF, but I had the prompt to get it printed as a book, because I remember how helpful reading a book of parables was for me. So this was a book of parables and Course sayings and some beautiful paintings all put together. And some of you might have even seen there was the bigger book of it here. And then I just was going out to check out the little prototype of the smaller book that you can carry around that fits in your hands. And so that was a beautiful, joyful trip as well, because underneath it was the sense of wanting to give away the motive and the joy underneath the parables. And the parables somehow are, at least for me, they were extremely helpful. I can only go so far with metaphysics, and my mind was saying, I need examples. I need lots of examples. And I need more examples, Jesus. And he's like, well, I'm taking you on the road, and then you'll get plenty of examples every day. You're not going to be asking me for examples. You're going to be like, whoa, that's huge. But that's how it works. Sometimes we have an insight, or we're practicing a particular lesson, and then the means to experience the lesson fully is given us by an opportunity to give. But it's just so unusual. We're just, our programming didn't set us up for that kind of life. We were in survival mode, and then we had certain goals in mind, and the more you go into the giving, the more the future goals don't seem to matter at all. They were once the forefront of, this is my life's plan, this is what I'm going to do to make myself feel worthy. And then you start to realize, I'm going to have to step back and let the Spirit lead the way every day and show me my worthiness from a completely different angle than the one that I already had. So they always say, if you want to make God laugh, tell God your plans. And then that starts to become more like, oh yeah, that's why I can't plan it out. I can't figure it out. I don't need to figure it out. I can just step into it. So yeah, to me that's how it goes. It's something that you have to. That's why it's called development of trust. It takes a lot of trust to keep moving in that direction when the ego is chirping in there like, oh, come on, enough of this. This is enough. Okay, you did your part now. Let's get back to the old plan. And you just don't want to go back to the old plan, once you get a taste of what this is. So that's how it went for me. It came into a sense of giving, where I would just quiet my mind, I would be still, and then these inspirations would come, and they would be given me, and I would be like, wow, that sounds like so much fun. So when I popped out of my meditations, then I was off on whatever it was, like the adventure of giving, not having to know what the outcome would be or anything, because in the end, our happiness is the outcome that is most important. And yet it's not a tangible thing. We're taught to reach for tangible goals, and happiness is a present moment experience. It's not something that you can quantify. it's a quality experience, but it's not quantifiable. And part of my journey was to let go of trying to quantify everything, you know. On a given day, I have no idea what's coming when I wake up. I mean, I woke up this morning and I checked this communication device that we use, program called Basecamp, and Jason had made a short video of him and two others talking they were so excited about windmills, and he because I had said, yeah, let's just go green and slowly work our way off the grid. And so he's so excited. He called some guy in Missouri, and this guy said, well, you sure got the right guy in the company, because I am completely off the grid. He lives completely off the grid. And he could calculate wattages, batteries, windmills, the best kind of batteries. And he said, where do you live? And Jason said, this Utah. And so the guy pinpointed exactly where the monastery is, and he said, that's the best place for solar in the whole country. That's of course you're going to use your solar. And then Jason said, well, there's a lot of wind too. And yep, great, you know. And then they started talking battery packs, and Jason says, oh, yeah. And the guy was saying, well, if you've really got great solar and great wind, you know, you can even run appliances with that much sun and that much wind. You don't have to like put it into batteries if you have that much. And so I just was making some comments about that today, but everybody's got their own calling, you know, and what they're called to do. Jason had told me, I think Jason and Lisa told me one time, I think they were maybe around Park City, and somebody had said to them that there was like a world-renowned psychic, and that they should go into this world-renowned psychic. So both of them went in, and both of them, their one question for the psychic is, what is my relationship to David Hoffmeister? they asked, just like get to the chase, you know. And so Lisa received her answer, and she was very happy and joyful. And then Jason received his answer, and the psychic said, your whole life will be involved in collaborative projects with David Hoffmeister. And he just was, what does that even mean? Collaborative projects, you know. You go to a psychic to get some good specific answers. But Lisa reminded him, you know, in the last month of that experience, which was some years ago. And he is coming. He's planning to come to the monastery. He's got his ticket already, doesn't he? Yeah. 31st. So it gets rolling here pretty quick. But he's all excited. And Soren, who is a man of many skills, was a shipbuilder, and he's a woods craftsman and all kinds of things, you know. I'd been thinking of Soren too, of like, yeah, if we're going to go green and we're going to do different projects and the things that the monastery needs, I thought of Soren. And then Soren had been saying, I keep thinking of the monastery. I feel I want to go up there to use my skills up there. And so it's really the Spirit, and Jesus is orchestrating everything. It seems like it involves people and time and thoughts, but it's like it's all part of a movement of the Spirit using everything for the awakening. And there's never anything out of place. You know, sometimes the ego can judge the things are out of place, or I don't want this and I don't want that. But even with the practical things of having the monastery running, you know, we just really trust that it's an opportunity for giving in the truest sense, and we aren't here to try to define how that will look. We're just here to put ourselves in a position to be used in a greater plan. And at first it's a little awkward, of course, because the ego is going to be in there, what's this? I didn't sign up for that. I don't want this and this and that. Yeah. I had when was that last time when I did a little meeting with everybody here? Wasn't it? The week before the retreat, yeah, we all just kind of gathered in here, and I think the whole talk was on inspiration and motivation, and there were lots of parables. I was just sharing lots and lots of parables from my experience of how it went, how I was eased into the inspiration, because, it's different than anything that we had planned. It wasn't in our life plans. I mean, none of this was in my life plans. When I was in high school, I didn't have a clue about any of it coming, but it all has been wonderful over the decades. So that's kind of how it goes. You just get more into it, and it seems more natural. And then after a while, you think, oh yeah, that's what my life is for. Forgiveness, for giving. For giving. My life is for giving. God is eternal life, and God is a giver. And so I'm going to be a giver like my Creator, and know my Creator through the giving. Yeah. Thank you. That book is now, it's being printed. That when I was there, I just looked at the prototype and I said, yes, I gave the go-ahead. I said, so there's 1,000 books being printed. I did ask about the big one too. I took it along because it was a bit, and it had even more paintings and photographs, and it was like a work of art and parables, and it was quite big. And so I said to him, yeah, here, I brought this book along. Can you take this back, and specs and everything? But yeah, that book for the original printing was very, very expensive. And then even to take it to a printer and ask for the cutoffs and breaks, it was way up there. And so at this point, the big one, the big coffee table book has not come into a printing thing. But the other one, there's 1,000 of them being printed right now. So we can let everyone know about that, because they were so helpful for me, the parables. So I think it's called 50 Years of Miracles. So there's a lot of parables in there with some beautiful paintings.
So I had a rather disturbing thought sequence this morning. I'm aware that when I enter a setting, I'm particularly aware of males and potential mates, because the thought is, okay, yes, I have this dear mate, but everything here changes, and so I've got to have a backup plan. And then that extended into, well, it's not just mates, it's everyone. It's like, what can they do for me? And then I was, it was very shameful to see that. Awful. I'm going through this world to get, and that's not very spiritual or nice. And then I remembered what you said to me last night about the error. It's not my fault. I don't have to take responsibility for this error. And I'm very eager to accept the correction. And when you first, and I'm aware of this phrase, and when you were first repeating it, I heard before you said it, so I'm not responsible for the error, I'm responsible for the correction. I heard that, and it's like, no, I am responsible for accepting the correction. I'm not doing the correction, I'm accepting. And so that's beautiful. And so what's the correction? So I began to think about God dependence, right? Because the changeless, that's the only thing that you can really depend on, because everything else changes here. And that's really beautiful. So if you have more to add to that, I'd appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, that does fit with what we were just talking about with the giving, because you do realize that you have to kind of line up with the Spirit in order to get into that natural flow of giving, and that's what the God dependence is all about. It's and in terms of what everybody mentioned early on as their themes, guidance is really the one. It's where the Holy Spirit uses what you believe in, what you currently believe in, and then reaches into the mind and uses that in a way that loosens your mind from the ego. it helps take you away from the ego through using what you currently believe in. So that can be fascinating. I like those movies, of all the movies, the best, where the main character or the main characters see that there's another way, or see something that's presented to them that they're willing to give a try, and then when they do, it turns into this joyful ride where they're just so happy, because that's how you learn how to be God-dependent. If God is happiness, then being God-dependent would be turning inward for that guidance to be happy, and being willing to let go of past learning with a lot of things. And also being very light, like even when you saw this desire to get a maid or have a backup and everything is so common in the world, I remember there was a movie called What the Bleep, and if some of you saw that, where these two guys that go to a party and they're just two, I think, teenagers maybe, or early 20s, that they're going to the party to get laid. And so the camera angle just targets where their eyes are drawn, and it's got all their thoughts. It's very, very transparent, very well done. It's kind of a quantum movie, and it's showing that same pattern. And that's the way it goes when we have goals to get, then it kind of consumes the mind when the mind could be used for miracles. And so it's you slowly are drawn into something that really inspires you, where you can give a gift, a true gift. It's from the Spirit, and then you can experience the joy of that. And then through the joy, you're drawn more into doing more of that. And the other part fades. But how practical Jesus is, always reaching us with what we believe, and using everything that we believe in. So the Spirit can use certain attractions, and does use certain attractions, but it opens the mind, it opens all kinds of doors in your experience that you weren't even aware were there. But using the attraction. So it's not like you have to beat yourself up for any of these things. It's more just the prayer is, okay, you know where I'm at, so you use me. And that's what a lot of the parables in this book are about. They're just very joyful parables, but they're all based on what I went through and what others in the community went through. And I think it's just a blessing. It just offers examples of inspiration of how it can be, Not that anybody is supposed to follow any particular form or try to emulate anybody else, but just to be inspired, which is part of that accept the correction. We're not here to try to emulate the form, but we can be inspired, and then we can allow the Spirit to give us our guidance, and we act on it. Then we feel great. We feel so joyful. So that's pretty much how it goes. Yeah. Thanks.
I feel like I'm in the middle of a big miracle right now, in part with the movie last night. It's like I feel like I'm being washed of this idea around like leaving and staying. Because this body seems to have left like 100 places. Like I've lived in, over 100 spaces. And I feel like I'm being washed of like the belief in choice around it. And when I sat down this morning, and when you came in, like the scene of the movie last night where Evelyn, it was like, like all of these faces, like, and and then I just like have this sense of now I can let go of like what in the past was like feeling like protection and like having to just letting go of a lack of safety and trust, and that I can just now like go more towards love and extend love more. Yeah. And thank you also because I can be wrong about what kind of movies are for healing, because I always think I need to have the root canal. So it's been nice to just like have that wash of laughter.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I really enjoyed that part where Evelyn zipped into that lifeline of where she was like a famous actress, and also the one where she was being trained by a kung fu teacher, and she was just like, well, look, almost like, look at me, like, and what she wanted to tell her husband of how wonderful her life was without him. No, I want to go back. I'm not finished talking to my husband. I want to tell him, how wonderful it is. And it goes the opposite of kind of what the world is always saying. But, this sense of, that everything you do and are and your worthiness somehow is based on being with a certain person. And then you have your life, which has had you to go to many places and leave many places, and sometimes the ego can even run a guilt trip. Like, you can't be around people. You're always running out and walking out on people and everything. But again, you start to see from this movie what a trip the ego is trying to make me guilty for what I just followed my intuition. I just followed my heart, and then the ego is trying to just take that and then turn it into a guilt trip. And, it's when you go deeper into the miracle, you start to realize as you get closer to the atonement that you can't really judge the form of what happened in good or bad terms, because Jesus says only the ego looks back. He's basically telling us in the setting the goal section, put your purpose out front, kind of like a torch or a light, and let it carry you and experience the world walking through it with the purpose out front. And don't look back, because only the ego looks back, and it only looks back to judge and analyze and evaluate. And that's part of the old survival mode. Look back in the past and analyze it, and so you don't make the same mistakes. When the ego is back even further, laughing, going, ha, I got you to look back again. And that's how it keeps you in mistakes, is through the looking back and through the analyzing. So it's like a whole new way of living when you can just say, no, there was a blessing in everything. I was guided. I'm not going to judge that. I'm not going to judge myself for that. And I don't, that's what I think Evelyn was saying, this thing of I have to save my daughter, or I have to keep my marriage with my husband together, or I must take care of my father. You could feel at the beginning those were all there. She wasn't even ready to get the divorce paper. He kept trying to give it, and she threw it around and everything. And then even later on, when her instructions were on the back of the divorce paper, she was not aware of those divorce declarations or what he was asking for. She was just focused on the instructions, and then also trying to do the right thing with Deirdre, not mess it up. But she wasn't even thinking divorce. And so that was a good example of how we just can follow the instructions fresh. Just what's my instructions right now? What about the past? Not important. What are my instructions right now? Or as my friend Dorothy would always say, so what? Now what? You see, so what? Now what? So what? Now what? It's a new mode. It keeps bringing you to the now what. And it gives a freshness, like, oh yeah, that's right. I'm not going to bemoan past decisions or past ideas. I'm really asking right now, what is it for me right now that will loosen my mind from my reliance on the past and put it onto spirit, onto God. And then the joy comes in being God dependent, where you are really pretty clueless. I do remember last Saturday showing the Mystery of Marilyn Monroe movie, and we learned in there that she bounced around to 10 foster homes. She felt a lot of rejection, didn't belong to a family, didn't have a sense of stability in her life, but then she just would spend hours and hours in the movie theater just watching the movies, living out there and watching the movies as a teenager. And then when she started to meet some people who were in the movies that could open doors for her, it was very much like she experienced it as kind of a miraculous thing. She didn't even see how her life was unfolding. And she said, it was just so wonderful. I felt like I was getting to interact for the world, really, for the first time. And she said, considering the way my life had been, it was unimaginably wonderful from her, compared with her childhood. And then, of course, we've seen that with, I showed a movie, The Eyes of Tammy Faye, very beautiful, heartfelt woman, loving God, trusting God, meeting someone who also loved God, wanting to go out and just share the love of God in any way that they knew how, starting off with puppets and using puppets, going from town to town, church to church, place to place. So you can see that, and then as you go into it, then of course the ego will try to get your mind back under its control, with its schemes and its games and everything. But if you just keep coming back to so what, now what, if it frees your mind up to really be open and available in this moment without beating yourself up. Because most of the time, when people want to resist the Holy Spirit, they're just falling into this pattern of guilt that they feel is so set, and they're so limited already that they don't even open to the possibility that they could be used in a greater plan. It's more like, oh, I blew it. And people live that thought, like, I blew it. And it's a sad song. It's like a funeral dirge. It's a sad song. I blew it. I blew it. I blew it. They become so convinced that they blew it. And if they could see my friend Dorothy's smiling face, so what? Now what? Just always like boom, boom. Now's a fresh moment. Now's a fresh opportunity to choose again. Now, the power of right now is huge, and we're just ready to access it. Say, okay, yeah, that's a new mode of living in the moment, starting fresh every moment, every day. Fresh day, fresh start. The past is gone. Fresh day, fresh start. That's your life now. Yeah.
I guess I just really want to expose some things. I feel like I'm getting some of the answers. I've been ruminating on some stuckness between two metaphors. I talked about it with Kirsten a little bit this morning. But essentially it's between the metaphor of the script is written and then this idea of manifestation. And my ego wants to scare the shit out of me by saying that these negative thoughts that come into my awareness about, bodily concerns, that something could go wrong in the body, worrying about, I think because of my profession and seeing, being a diagnostician and dealing with a lot of illness. So when these thoughts come in, the ego tells me that I'm creating, that I'm going to miscreate or create some kind of negative outcome. And I just want to I want to expose that. And I just want to release that fear. It feels like it's been loosening its grip. But I still feel it come up. And I'm wondering if you could speak to that, these two ideas. And it seems philosophical or metaphysical, but really it's about the story of me. I think it's like me being afraid of like my outcome and inform. And yeah, I think that's...
Yeah.
It's loosening, because I realize that, now I know, like, I'm not even a person, like, I'm not even a human being, I'm not a body, and I feel that loosening. It's been so helpful these last few days. Like, I want to be honest that there's been this huge shift, and it feels a lot lighter than it used to, but I also, like, kind of want to just give it all away. I just want to completely release it and lay it on the altar for good.
Yeah. Yeah, that the fear of miscreating is a big concern. I mean, that's like a major obstacle to truth. And it's the fear of miscreating is really the fear of the power of the mind. And it's, Jesus says, you're afraid of your thoughts. And I've said before that this world was made to keep you mindless, and that's why such a focus on the body and even the brain, and even neurotransmitters in the brain. It's quite a genius, sophisticated system of thinking, even that the brain thinks. Because it's part of endowing the puppet, which is just a learning device. I've used in some of my recent talks with movies. It's just I'll pull up a pencil and a marker, and I keep having these pencil or the pen and the marker interacting. These are learning devices, and when we talk about mistakes and errors, Jesus is telling us that the learning device, the body, never makes mistakes. It goes counter to human experience, which is that people always are flawed and always making lots of mistakes. And Jesus is saying, no, the mistake is in your mind. When you're in your wrong mind and you're aligned with the ego, that's the mistake. It's not what the body does or doesn't do. The learning devices don't make mistakes. It would be like going to take an exam, a major exam, and then getting the score back, and then just doing a tirade on the pencil, just going like, can't believe you marked those answers and wrote those things, and chewing it out for like 3 hours, and then going home and saying, I blew the test, that damn pencil, and going on and on about the pencil. And Jesus is like, well, that's actually what you do when you blame the body and its actions and everything, because the body's just a learning device. Part of your entire perception is just another aspect of your perception that the Holy Spirit can use. And he does say the Holy Spirit just uses the body as a communication device, and the ego uses it for pride, pleasure, and attack. Oh, that's where the guilt comes in. That's where the fear comes in. But it comes from, actually, we could say, over-evaluating the learning device by thinking it's an identity, it's who you are, it's important, thinking that the body learns. I mean, most of us have gone through quite a few years of education, both formal and informal, and Jesus is like, no, the body's not learning anything, and persons don't learn. It's the mind that learned to be a person that's the problem. It's the mind that learned this world without stopping to pause for a second, like, why am I doing this? Jesus said, no, you just bullied your way ahead, just overlearning a very complex world and a complex system, and then now you could just make the transfer from being more of a diagnostician to saying, oh, the body's just part of my perception, and I am going to pay close attention to my emotions, and I am going to pay closer attention to my thoughts. And when I get into ideas of manifestation, which are quite common in the New Age, you create your own reality, and on and on and on. And there's, like, if you gave me a list of hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of teachers, the Course really is not a New Age teaching. It has some aspects that could be thought of that align with it, but it's definitely not a create your own reality teaching. And many spiritual teachers are teaching you create your own reality. The Course is teaching God is the creator of reality. You can only accept your reality. You should gladly accept your spiritual reality, and you do not create your reality because your reality was already created for you. It's an eternal creation too. It's not something that's a piece of work. It's in progress. You were created perfectly and entirely perfectly for all eternity. So that kind of goes down underneath the manifesting ideas. I mean, if manifesting is used, I would say just for a brief period of time as a witness of how powerful your mind is and how powerful your thoughts are, then that's the value of it. But that's certainly not the lesson of forgiveness. When people get into manifesting, they're basically saying, I can use the power of my thought to shape the world and shape my future, which seems like a pretty common idea. That's a big time New Age idea. I used to tell students back in the 1995 and the 1990s that I said, if you want to do a workshop that will be very poorly attended, just title it The Impossibility of Manifesting. And they all laughed, and I said, and if you really want no one to show up, just do one on healing the pleasure. Yeah, that's they may nobody will come, nobody will be in there, nobody will pay to get in that room. They'll be like, but those actually would be very helpful. I was saying, I was trying to make the point, but with manifesting, the thing with manifesting is it still involves linear time. It's like using the power of the mind and using something the past to manifest something that you don't seem to have in your awareness, but that you want. But the very idea that you want it is based on the ego and on the past. If the mind is asleep and it really is clueless now, it doesn't know what's best for it. That's those early workbook lessons in the 20s where Jesus says that you do not perceive your own best interest. And if you're going to manifest, it would be important to know your best interest. Like you don't want to manifest something that actually is harmful for yourself. So, but Jesus says in no situation do you perceive your own best interest. Not in most or in some. In no situation do you perceive your own best interest. When Jesus says that, then the ego's like, oh, God, that's ridiculous. Stop the book, stop the lessons. That's enough of that. But no situation do you perceive your own best interest. That just points to how, wow, if I was going to be manifesting and I don't perceive my own best interest, then maybe the manifesting isn't essential to the main idea of the curriculum, which is forgiveness. And if I want to forgive so I can be peaceful and joyful and happy, and this is like a side goal that's more of a distraction, then I don't want to go for the distraction. I would rather, go for the actuality. I was in Michigan, I don't know, over more than maybe 2 decades ago, and I think I was in Lansing, Michigan. I think I went and I did a talk, and I remember there, and during the break of the talk, a woman came to me and she said, "Hi, nice to meet you. They call me the manifesting lady. I can manifest anything. I do. I can manifest soulmates, cars, houses, diamond rings. I am the manifesting queen. I can manifest anything." And I manifested for myself, but for lots of people. And, she was quite happy of her manifesting role. And I said, but that's wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful. That's a really good example of the power of the mind. So I said, when we come back from the break, after we have our chips and dip and everything, I want you to tell just maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes of all your manifesting parables. So she did. And yeah, some of the people were ready to sign up. I was giving her, helping her career a lot too. She had a lot of people. Okay, how do I contact you, and how do I hire you? But then I said, after that 10 or 15 minutes, I said, now I'm going to talk about forgiveness. And I'm going to take it down to what's important, because that step is helpful to see that you have a powerful mind, and that is something that Spirit wants us to see, is that we have a powerful mind. Because we're afraid of the mind, because we're afraid of thoughts, then Jesus wants us to realize the power of the mind. But then the purpose for that mind, do we want to try to change the world, or do we want to change our mind to find eternal peace? That is the key. If you had a powerful mind, would you use it to experience eternal life, or would you use it to manifest things over and over and over and over and over and over like a broken record? And so I think that's the thing. I mean, I never could foresee or imagine anything that came along for me in the script. But I don't think I really cared either. I was happy to be being used for miracles, and happy for the opening of my heart, and then the rest I really didn't care about. So in order to manifest anything, it's still, if you look at it in terms of the form, you have to believe that you know what's your best interest is, and that's what you're trying to manifest, is something that you believe will better your mind. And what Jesus is saying is, well, everything on the timeline is not there to better your mind, it's there to forgive and come to simultaneous time, come to the present moment. That's the goal of spirituality, is to be present. It's not to change the world. Today I clicked on my computer though, and I went and even clicked on the movie Son of God with this Portuguese actor as Jesus, and I watched a few clips and everything, and one of the apostles came to him and said, "What's going on? What is this? What is this all about? What are we to do?" And Jesus said, "We're going to change the world." And so I thought, oh, because then in the Course, Jesus says, "Seek not to change the world, seek rather to change your mind about the world," which just shows you how even when you look at movies and depictions of Jesus's life, you have to go so deep to come into the actual guidance and presence of what it is. And so that's the joy of the journey. Now, with the fear of miscreating, it still helps me to remember when Jesus said, "You are not responsible for the error, you are responsible for accepting the correction for the error." And the error is the ego's belief that you can miscreate. You can pull your mind away from God, which is the first act of defiance. Like, I'm not as you created me. I can make my own identity, and I can be the author of my world, and that's the first one. But Jesus says that itself is just an error, and it had no it was not detrimental at all to eternity. It had no eternal impact, that error. And since it had no eternal impact, he says that's no impact. It doesn't count as an impact. You weren't able to change what God created. You can believe that you can, and that's where the belief in, miscreation comes in. It's an ancient thing, because it's the ego still saying, "Wow, you did it before, and you may do it again, and you may do it to your body." You see how it made the body as a witness, as a device to use for separation. And that's certainly what illness or even symptoms are all about. It's misuse of mind. I always like coming back to Mary Baker Eddy. There's no mind in matter. There's no life, truth, substance, or intelligence in matter. And that just takes you back toward the healing, like, yeah. Then there's one part of the Course where Jesus says, "You are mind holy mind, that's WHOLLY mind, and only mind. Most of us are used to going to mind, body, spirit festivals, and Jesus is saying, well, you don't have a body, but you have a divine mind and you have a spirit, and they're kind of analogous, they're the same. But that's what starts to really bring the healing about, when you don't try to mix things. This is a world of trying to mix things, even mind, body, spirit. And it's helpful to go into what they call the mind-body connection, like the thoughts that you think, can seem to manifest in the body. But then again, that has to be just a stepping stone idea, because how can something that's real, which is the mind and in the mind of God, have any interaction with the body? And basically, Jesus is saying the body is like a concretized form of the belief in sin. That's what the body is. It's a concretized form of the belief in sin. But then he'll come right back and he'll say, well, you seem to be capable of many things, but the one thing you are completely incapable of is sin. You cannot sin. It's like Jesus, whoa, this is different than the interpretations that I grew up in church. They never said that from the pulpit. And Jesus is like, you cannot sin, because sin is separation from God. And here's Jesus Christ saying, you cannot. And he's like saying, take it from me, I know. You cannot sin. That's where you get back to the innocence. He's basically saying, you cannot miscreate. Don't be so afraid of the ego and its schemes and games, because you are not capable of miscreating. And that's what heals. It's very powerful. Yeah, very powerful.
This is a question when I'm really present, I doesn't feel the need to be answered, but it keeps coming back in my mind, so I want to expose it. When I hear that the script is written, it's like really relaxing, that I just need to be present and watch it like a film. And as I go present, it starts to be more and more light and love. But in the courses, it says that through forgiveness and through present time, we can collapse time and save time. So, is it that, like, when we are really present, the film doesn't matter anymore, or the scripting is getting shorter, or it's just when I stop believing the film will disappear? I don't want to limit in these three things, but how does I match the script is written with saving time and collapsing time?
Yeah. Well, like from our movie last night, we saw when Evelyn went into the IRS office with her family at the beginning and the end. And in the end, she kind of had a smile on her face, and there were still words being thrown around, but she didn't really seem like she was concerned about what the words were. Like she wasn't concerned about an outcome of the whole situation. Whereas when she went at the beginning, she was very concerned about the outcome. And also she had this other thing happening where she started to get some, like from the closet, the janitor's closet, her mind kept going back and forth between the janitor's closet and the being there with Deidre and her family. But it is like when you relax, you're able to just observe and to watch it. And more than that, you're able to see more the sameness of the script. And what's underneath that is that you're starting to see the sameness of the past. In other words, if the whole world, Jesus says in lesson 158, this world was over long ago, and now we are but mentally reviewing what has already gone by. That's a good reflection of also lesson number 7. I see only the past. So it's mainly it's a state of mind where you're able to kind of look on the world as see it as past, and then the only impetus to say or do anything is through inspiration. Like you would want the words or the actions to be used in an inspiring way that would bless everyone, and then you come into that. So the time collapse is just more. If we say the ego made the script, and then the present moment is like an out of pattern experience where you're lifted above the battleground, above the script, into the witness self or the observer. That also has a component of you might say, the present moment and cause and effect are together. So the script is the belief that cause and effect are apart, and that the past causes the present and causes the future. And so as you keep witnessing and observing, and you're in the miracle, that seems to bring the alpha and the omega together. It's really collapsing the whole construct down. It's like you're not needing to play out scenes. It's like taking chunks of scenes that you would seem karmically to need to repeat or play out, and they're just being chunked. They're just being taken out. That's from a more of a linear perspective, a broader perspective, and Jesus is never really. He's just telling us about it, how helpful it is. And in that sense, it is starting to eliminate time, linear time, because it's eliminating the need for it. If you end up not believing in karma, like the past needing to repeat, then there's no need for karma in the end. It's just love extending love. All that I give is given to myself. All that I give comes back to me. It gets into the divine law that giving and receiving are the same. And what you give, you receive. So, yeah, it's a little bit of all those things happening. It's that you don't want to try to somehow make some kind of declaration, like if you make a declaration where you basically say, I have no need for this world whatsoever. If it's really a true declaration, it's coming from the spirit, then that's the end of the world. But if it's the ego saying, I'm tired of this world, I'm sick of this world, I have no need for this world anymore, then the ego is down under the trenches just laughing like, ha ha, you say that, but you don't believe that at all. And there's a line in the workbook where Jesus said, many have tried to renounce the world while still believing in it. So we look back at all the ancient past, like in India and the ancient past, and the Wailing Wall in the Middle East, and where it's the path in the Eastern realm, it's called the path of renunciation. And it's not just East. I mean, we have lots of priests and nuns in the West, so to speak, that have practiced renunciation. But Jesus still, he comes back in the workbook and says, many have tried to renounce the world while still believing in it. So they take vows of poverty, chastity, obedience, and they have to still deal with repression. Like the ego is sitting under there going, oh, come on, go ahead. You can try to live a life of sacrifice. How are you going to be happy when you're sacrificing all the good things of life? And so that's why it's an inner process. That's why we do need miracles to collapse the time so that we authentically can renounce the world by not believing in it, by getting so into the core of who we are that we can see the nothingness of the world. With the Holy Spirit, we can see the nothingness of it, but we can't do that personally. And there have been many that have tried, to take the path of renunciation. And oftentimes it's the path of renunciation can be a very hard, difficult, and dark journey, because it's almost like saying, I should be spiritual, and I think this is how a spiritual person should behave. So you see, it's a belief. And then the mind just acts out that belief, and it's still not happy. It feels like it's deprived. There's a lot of people on the spiritual path that feel, I did everything that the mystics and saints did, and I'm so sad. I'm just so deprived. I'm depressed. I follow the mystics and saints. But the mystics and saints weren't really saying, do as I do. They were saying, train your mind as I have trained my mind, and do it in a way that let the Spirit lead the way, using what you believe in. So you don't go down a path of depression and of sacrifice, because there's no joy in that. We have, what's the movie, The Reluctant Saint? They're Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon, and then Reluctant Saint takes place. Was it in Italy? It was in Italy, of a man who I guess they say was not too bright, but his mother believed in him. But I think his father would just leave the home and avoid the mother. He was just gone for long stretches of time. And the mother, as he grew older, the son, she just thought, what will become of you and what will become of me? So she went and took him to a monastery, and she pushed him into the monastery. She's like, you're not too bright, and you're not going to be able to hold down a job, so I better get you in the monastery and let God take care of you. So she kind of threw him, foisted him upon the monastery, and then he seemed to make all kinds of mistakes in the monastery. So there were people in the monastery wanting to get rid of him too, and the mother's like, no, you can't. You promised, you took him. He's off my hands, it's yours now. And so they finally thought, how can we get him out of the way? He's going to mess everything up. He says he wants to be a priest. Oh God, we can't let him be a priest. He'll just ruin the whole church. So they put him out with the animals in the stables. They just got here, the stables. You just take care of the stables. And, well, pretty much. Yeah. All day long, get out there, get away from us. But he was so loving with the animals. The animals were actually the best thing for him. And his heart opened up, and he was so loving that finally one day, was it like a bishop or archbishop or something came by and visited and was just struck by the presence of this man who was kind of cast out to be with the animals, cast out by his mother and cast out by the Catholic Church, and then he became so in the present moment that he levitated. His body took off from earth. And he's called the Reluctant Saint because nobody wanted anything to do with him. They just said he was dumb, he was stupid. And so it just shows the Spirit knows what's best. The Spirit took and used him in the stables with the animals so he could soar and soar. And eventually he was made a priest. He Spirit purified him, and then when he levitated, That was pretty strong evidence for, whoops, maybe we messed up with this guy. He's, so he eventually became a priest before he passed away, and I think he wasn't, I think toward the end of his life, he wasn't even eating food. He was having maybe some liquids, and he probably became what we might call maybe a breatharian. Levitating, going without food, solid food, he was on his way into experiential way with God, but that's how it has to go. It can't be that you personally try to make your way to God by taking the vows and denying what you still believe in. Because if you deny what you believe in, then it will still generate a sense of sacrifice and coercion. Then you feel like, oh, wait a minute, I'm being coerced into this. And there is no advancement when there's that feeling of sacrifice and coercion. So we see how we have to be very intuitive in this, because the ego will try to take anything. It will try to generate false devotion and false platitudes and false things to believe in, as if you can hold on to like a theology and wake up to God. And even the Course says in Lesson 189, forget this world, forget this course, and come with holy empty hands unto your God. It's not saying that you're going to take the book into heaven and sit around with Jesus reading the book. No, Jesus is not interested in reading. He's not interested. He says words are twice removed from reality. So the Spirit of Christ is not into the words. So, yeah.
Hi, David.
Hi.
We were talking about thoughts the other day here, and thoughts also are not any part of reality in truth. Is that right?
Well, Jesus says we have real thoughts and attack thoughts. And you might even think of a mind thinks. So the mind of God thought Christ up. But it's a different kind of thought than is thought of in this realm. It's purely abstract. It's just purely spirit. But the approach, what Jesus is saying is, you have real thoughts in your mind, and then you have a thick layer of attack thoughts and grievances and opinions, judgments. And the point is to forgive or release the judgments so that you can know your real thoughts. So sometimes thinking, can get a bad name. It's like, get out of your head, get into your heart, and don't think it, feel it, and everything. But that's why I made those levels of mind, because thinking is an aspect of the mind, and emotions are an aspect of the mind, and emotions come from thoughts. So there's been therapists for years that have come along and emphasized, put a little more emphasis on thinking. Like Albert Ellis was a therapist, and his whole thing was about cognition, changing your thinking, change your experience by change your thinking. And that's very, very effective and very, very helpful. The only thing that's underneath the thoughts are the beliefs. So you sometimes like Byron Katie will say, whatever you're thinking, don't believe it. And ultimately that's because thoughts come from beliefs. And when you forgive certain beliefs and you ultimately forgive the ego, then the mind comes into a stillness. But that stillness still involves some cognition, but these are thoughts of God. They I am as God created me is a real thought. That doesn't have any perception in it. I am as God created me. That's just a pure real thought. That's an actual fact. Yeah. So that fact, that's one lesson that can set you free, because it's a fact. It doesn't even have a perceptual component to it. Yeah.
You could just always keep that in your mind.
Yeah.
It's like a backup.
Yeah. He's like saying that this one thought, use it and save the world.
Yeah. Yeah, because the mind can get pretty crazy with a lot of crazy thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah, our movie last night showed us
Yeah.
how wide the variation can be.
And this, the wanting to sleep, just the desire to sleep. Like, it's so funny, I'm sitting right across from you, and for whatever reason, I keep falling asleep. That happens every time I'm with you, because I don't know why. I think maybe it's because I'm so relaxed when I'm in the room with you that I fall asleep. Or it could be my ego wanting me to fall asleep. I'm not sure. But I'm like, oh my God, you came all the way here. Now wake up, listen to what he's saying. It's just the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
Can't really even explain it, but I snap out of it.
Yeah.
Now, what did you say?
Yeah.
It's weird.
Jesus just has so much fun with anything. When I had this little peace house, he sent me an assistant for 5 years. Her name was Kathy, and we would go around and do these gatherings, and she was my assistant, and she would fall asleep in my gatherings, and pretty much, like quite often, like we would be sitting there. We go to a living room or something. We'd all be sitting around, and I'd be talking, and she'd be like, her head would start to go, and then her head, and then she'd start to go like this, and then finally she would completely just give into it, and she would go, and that was her sleep position. She would, as the jaw could relax, head tilted back, balance her. So, and then I just continued right on, and the people in the room were like, almost like, what's happening? His assistant is dead. It looks like she's dead. Yeah, yeah. And so, and then I remember one time she was doing that, and then there was another woman who was maybe 60 or 70 that she started to go too, and a couple seats down from, and she was like this, and then she looked because her husband was sitting next to her, so she just dove in with her head into his shoulder. And then she came up to me during the break, and she said, "Oh, David, I'm so sorry." She was apologizing. I have narcolepsy and all these kind of things. And I said, don't worry about it. Just, you're getting it all through osmosis. Just enjoy. And then she was like, "Great, thank you." She went right back. You see, I don't care whether people are sleeping or waking. I'm just continuing having a good time, and it doesn't really interrupt anything at all whether people are sleeping or waking. But that happens. Yeah, it's like, it's just.
I think it's just the fact that, because it happens always when I'm in the same room with you, when I really want to hear. But I think it's just because there's something happening, like a relaxation that takes place, which you can't really be too upset about that.
No, you can just enjoy it. Enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm afraid you're going to think, my God, who is this?
No, I've been through that. Yeah. Yeah, I had so much fun with Kathy, because she would bring her dad by the Peace House, and he would say, well, he said, "You don't know everything about Kathy, David." And he said she fell asleep at the wheel and crashed into a tree and was in the hospital. And he's like, "So I worry about her," and everything like this. But to me, it's like everybody is just symbols being used by the Spirit in a very helpful way, and you can't judge the symbols. We're not capable of judging them positively or negatively. And then at one point, she was setting up a gathering for me in Wisconsin, and she would talk to the host on the phone and set the whole thing up. And she said, "Oh, I really like this guy too, and I'd like to go." And I said, "Sure." So she came along, and she fell in love with the host. So she was like, after a while, she's let me know. She said, "Well, I've really enjoyed helping you out, but I want to marry Bob." And Bob had 2 other wives. They both were named Kathy. So this was the third one She was Kathy number 3, and would you come to the orchard, and we'll do the official marriage, but would you come to the orchard and do a wedding ceremony? I said, sure. So I did, and then I would go there back to this place called Bumpety. They called it Bumpety Road because his grandchildren couldn't say Grandpa, and so they called Grandpa Bumpety Road where he lived. And so I would go there, and I would like drive up with some friends. They would know I'm coming, and Kathy and Bob would run out of their house, jump on the picnic table, and start singing and serenading anyone who came to visit. They would be jumping on the picnic table, both of them, just singing and welcoming people. So that was beautiful. And then there actually came a time where I guess she was out driving and she went off a bridge and went down into the water in the car, and that was Kathy. She and so. But I remember my friend Lisa. She was very connected with Kathy too. She said, "Oh, I feel Kathy. She's with us closer now than she ever was, even when in form." Lisa could say, "Wow, she's right with us. She's helping us right now." Because it's things are not what they seem to be. Form is just a reflection of a witnessing of what's going on in the mind. So there was a deep love and deep devotion, and many, many beautiful parables from that. But the sleeping was just part of it. So it's like, oh, it is what it is. I didn't care.
I'm not sure what I'm going to say because
you speak into the mic.
It's been so wonderful, and it's like I had all these questions, and I don't know when they're going to get answered, but as long as I keep searching, even without a question, they get a feeling, learning how to be quiet. I couldn't. So I just started talking all the time. Yeah. And that did something. And as soon as it feels like I learned something, I forget what I learned. And so much has happened. I started to make myself sad that I'm going to forget it all. And, but it doesn't matter. Because somebody's got my back. And I get inspiration, and I prayed and for him to help me do something, and it brought me insight about I might have been talking all the time so I could be quiet. I had a lot to say, and nobody wanted to listen to me for years, Yeah. And I didn't really need a body there because Jesus had a little fan club. I painted them because I saw them all the time. They changed with whatever I got on. Yak. And they weren't cheering me on. Some of them looked sad, and some of them, there was 1, then there was 2, then there was 4. But I believe that I'm the dreamer of the dream. First, I couldn't believe that. And then I believed that, how could I do that? How could I do that to myself? And I hated myself. And I learned you have to give what you need. And I needed love, for me to love myself. So I had to learn how to love because I didn't even know what it was. But Jesus helped me empty. And he started filling me up. And I didn't believe it was him. But when I get it wrong, he lets me or helps me forget. And when I want to hold on to something, I might still forget it, but he'll bring it back as long as I'm looking for something. I don't never know what I'm going to find. He brings treasures. Because I go out looking for something and I don't find it. And so I try again and don't find it. And I just felt it the other day, you know. It meant a lot to me. I was over there in the chapel or in the movie. I don't know time. But it was, it doesn't matter. Just keep looking. You're always going to find something that just might not have been what you were looking for. And I saw a picture of a present, you know. It just fills me up. I don't know how to say it. And I'm not going to forget, because now my desire is, I learned how to be quiet in here. And it's wonderful. And I want to keep it. So y'all pray for me. I'll stay like this forever. I don't care where I go from here.
It was well worth it, the whole trip, for that experience of the quiet. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Terry.
Yippee.
Yippee!
Well, I could say something.
The microphone just fell in your
Yeah,
hand.
it did. Greg was reading my mind. So the thing I've been thinking about recently is how to take this all back to, you know, where I'm headed for next. And I think the biggest classroom I've got is my work world, and which is kind of a corporate world. We do technology. Being here was just so life-changing and wonderful, and I feel like I've been healed of a lot of things. I don't know what they are, but there's just been an enormous release of things, and working with the people, with all of you, and how you go about your day. I've always felt that your heart is directed towards Holy Spirit. Your heart is directed towards God, and that has been very inspiring, because I come in and maybe my heart is a little mixed up, but I want to go that direction. And so when needed, there's, you know, kind of a gentle, you know, that's the direction. And it's beautiful. And so I think about that, and I'm wondering how to bring that into a place where, you know, there's nobody's a course student, but I have to, you know, bring that with me. So I guess, and I've been listening very carefully to the question that you answered last night for Janine, and then for Maria, and then Pauline. I mean, I think the answer is within all of those answers, but I felt maybe also that I should share this because there might be others who are like me, and you might want to say one or two words. How do you how you do that?
Yeah. Well, for me, Jesus always reminded me it's my lesson, it's my own lesson, but in terms of the world or workspaces or different relationships, Jesus just kept telling me that it's all based on invitation. So like even with a workspace, you just have to be very relaxed, very tuned in, and then just open for any kind of invitations that come your way. And I think it was maybe a month or a couple months ago, I happened to be on and I saw where it was recorded, but Google had invited Eckhart Tolle to come to Google and to talk, with maybe the CEO and some of the different people. And I just put a smile on my face because, again, you know, it was an invitation. And Eckhart was also very playful, kind of using a lot of symbols in a very playful way, but that's how I imagine Jesus always was with everyone, playfully using the symbols to teach through an attitude. His attitude was really doing the teaching. So I think that's the most important thing, is just if you flow with the invitations, then that's the safe way to go. That's the way where you're really saying to Jesus, you direct the way. You tell me where to bestow the miracles. You tell me where I can really share what's on my heart. And that's the way I've felt. All the places I've traveled and all the conferences and bookstores and backyards and living rooms and whatever, they were all just based on invitations. I wasn't trying to go to change the world or to try to convince somebody of something. It was just flow with the invitations. And that has worked really, really well, because you start to feel like, oh yeah, it's my mind that's getting put in that direction that I want to go. It's happening, and it's just I'm flowing with the invitations. Even all of you coming here to share the movies, we just put out the invitation, and there it is. And look, it just happens, and then we're all just enjoying it. But it's all through the invitation. So I love that, because it doesn't have a sense where you have to try to make someone or something be a certain way. You can just really appreciate everything exactly as it is. And that's what the healing shows us. So thank you, Darren. Thank you. No efforting. Yeah, no efforting. Like carried down a quiet path in summer. Yeah, that's lovely. That's lovely.
Listening, Darren, just came a question for me too. Like, I'm also a lot invested in my work, and I can see that Jesus can use a part of that, like to teach and to learn a lot. And if I'm there, it's because I'm still believing that. But it seems to have a part, I don't know, like that has to do with numbers, with allocation, with scarcity, with reporting to a board, to shareholders, to your... it seems to have a part of the mentality in the corporate world that I don't know if it would be like try to bring the lie, the truth to the lie, or how I can bring this light to the truth, because like I can feel like to say true to people that work with me, to be an example, but I can find a way like to go to the shareholders and say, well, see how much more peaceful everybody is. Yeah, we are burning a lot of money, but see how it's not real. And maybe this is a big part of the conflict that I feel, which is like I can see that a great part of my job, like it's being useful, but there seems to be a part that I can't like. It seems to be part of my job. You say that like you can't be enlightened and be a business leader or a CEO, and I feel that conflict, and I doesn't know if I have to, if when I forgive it will disappear, and I don't know how it will disappear, and maybe I shouldn't worry about that. I shouldn't worry about that, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just from following the guidance, progressively things that were important in the past start to they fulfill their usefulness, and then they can be laid aside. And I think years ago, I mean, I used to go down to Mexico just to be along the ocean, Puerto Vallarta, and just to meditate by the ocean. I wasn't doing any Course in Miracles gatherings or anything down there. I would just go down there to be still. But I eventually I would do some gatherings, and then there was a man down there, even before I started doing many gatherings in Mexico, who he started like watching hundreds and hundreds of, maybe thousands and thousands of hours of videos, and he started making YouTube videos and contacting me and saying, I'm sharing all of your teachings in Spanish. And so over the years we've corresponded, but he's very, in terms of the world, he came from a wealthy family. He was very successful. He was very bright. He loved teaching the Course for a period of years. And then more recently, he contacted me because he had developed a highly sophisticated technology, which was basically, he said, it looks like it's kind of a world revolution. It can revolutionize the world, the way people communicate, the way they interact, because it's such a high technology where things can be shared and exchanged directly without middlemen, without governments, without societal things, just very, very much heart to heart between people. It was so highly encrypted that he said, I think this could revolutionize the way people communicate, and it would revolutionize economic structures and revolutionize so many things. And he got to the point where he had developed it, and he had a company, and he had all these people working with him and everything. And he basically called me up, and he had like Maria's prayer. I just want God. I don't want anything else. I don't know what's happening with this, because my mind's been engaged in it, and it's been flowing and opening up, but I don't want to try to bring the truth into the illusion. I would rather be happy and peaceful and joyful than even revolutionize the world. And so we had some discussions about this, and more he could start to see that as long as he was in like the head of the company or the management role with people, that his mind's energy still was being drawn into another highly sophisticated form of business, that he still something was eating at him. He's been very devoted with the Course for years, and so I said, well, he said, am I still trying to bring the truth and the illusion? And I said, yeah, I think if you really look at this, that if this is a huge gift to the world, you will have to pass this off to the people that the Spirit gives you to extend the gift without you having to use mind energy. He said, yeah, I've whittled it down to like 4 hours a day, but still the 4 hours, I feel like I'm doing the splits here, because my mind is so drawn into the love, but I can feel it's so helpful. So in the end, how he reconciled it was he did pray and pray and pray and pass off everything. He took himself out of the equation, and he just kind of blew a kiss to it and said, here's my gift to the world. And he just always was wanting to send me gifts. I mean, we started getting boxes and boxes of gifts from Amazon at La Casa from this guy. He was like buying camping gear, and I mean, just incense. And Lisa was like, what the hell? We've got like 20 boxes here. And they started bringing boxes over to me, and hats and all kinds of things. And so he went through that phase of he wanted to give in his own way. He went on Amazon spree. But eventually that kind of ended too, and that was beautiful. And then I said, "What are you going to do?" And he said, "I'm going camping. I have a camper, and I think he had maybe some dogs, and he was just going to go out and just be out in nature." After having done so many things with his mind in his life, he was so excited to tell me, "I'm going camping, and if you can't contact me, it's because I'm just gone way off the grid and just going out to nature and everything like this." And I think that's just a progression that everybody goes through in their own way. They want to be truly helpful, and they keep learning from Spirit what that is. So it's not like you turn away from your gifts. He had amazing gifts to give in terms of this technology and everything, but in the end, he could see that as long as he was like the CEO of the company, that there was a certain amount of things that kept falling back to him. And he was so sincere. He was willing to question those beliefs. He was always calling me and saying, "What's going on here? Am I compromising here?" And that's been the way, even with our mystery school. We've had some people more recently that have been very, very successful in the world, very, very successful, and yet they're starting to be drawn deeper and deeper into just living this and letting it's kind of like letting the Spirit kind of unwind them from the things that they were very successful in. And so they're more and more being convinced by the Spirit that they're just not giving up anything at all, that this is like an adventure of a lifetime. They're both, the woman has sold her business, the man is stepping out of his business, and they're both kind of on the big adventure now, just of listen and follow and see where it goes. So yeah, you'll know it intuitively, it just comes intuitively.
You won't be able to do it anymore.
Yeah, I remember. Didn't you have a hair salon,
No,
or was
had
it
a home care agency.
home care agency?
And I couldn't. It was in the way of the world. It was extremely successful, but I couldn't even go out and collect money anymore. I couldn't. I had to hire somebody to go get the payments and deposit it in my account. And then I kept calling people and Living Miracles and Suzanne Sullivan, and she just kept telling me, it's if you're being prompted, you're being called out of the world, you're never going to be happy anymore doing what you're doing. It'll be impossible. And it was. So I actually, through guidance, a really close guidance, I was able to tell all the families of the people that I was caring for, that I was turning the business over to my assistant, and that if that wasn't okay with them, that they could get another agency and different caregivers. And every single one of them said, "No, please, you go ahead and go to Mexico. We want to stay with these caregivers." And Jesus worked it out for me where I was able to, all of the things that I thought were so important in my life, like the mementos and the pictures, and one by one, first of all, I had a storage unit of crap that I'd kept for 10 years. I didn't even know what was in it, but every time I would go there to try to empty it out, I'd get emotional. So I had a friend. I said, "Listen, you got to go over there and clear that thing out. Take it all to the Goodwill. I can't do it." So he did one day. He loaded his truck up, all that crap, and took it to the Goodwill. So that was done. And then all the mementos that had been in my family for antiques, I gave to all my friends' daughters that were so loving all of it. I laid it all out on a table. Take what you want. And then I got rid of all the clothes, all the crap and I left with 3 suitcases and flew to Mexico. And it was because it was guided. And then it was a little traumatic at first, but there was darkness that came up. It's the whole process. But I could, you will get to a point that you just can't do it. In the world, it looked like, what are you doing? Walking away from this like cash cow, but I couldn't stand it. So it took me some time because it's not going to go away. You're not going to all of a sudden be able to, when you're being called out by Jesus, you're not going to be able to do it. I wasn't able to do it. Yeah. So that was my story. That's helpful to me. It might be a little scary, but
I remember when
40.
we have 5 minutes. Okay. There's a closing circle. Oh, okay. Very good. I remember with you, Rita, you've been out here to the monastery for like a retreat. And then after that, we went and we synchronistically met at the airport. Yeah. Yeah, at the airport. Yeah, that was amazing. So it was like Jesus, like, oh, and here's another holy encounter, a whole week together, and then another one in the airport, So, okay, well, thank you all. I think Kirsten was feeling too, we could have like a closing circle, and then I know we want to go out and have a group photo so we can all share that. Thanks for the memories.